we're doing that, let's get the recording going. Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and Louis D'Souza here on this Monday, October the 29th, 2018. It's 8 a.m. New York time, but that would be actually, what is it now, 12 noon London time?
Midday, yeah.
It's midday. All right. And for those who are on the west coast of the U.S., that would be 5 a.m. So if you're waking up at 5 a.m. and watching us, we say thank you very much for getting up this early to watch us. But we are going to also be joined pretty soon by a special guest that Louis has invited. And I'm not quite sure when she's going to be here, but when she's here, that's going to be a lot of fun. So Louis, how have you been? Has it been a good week for you?
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks, Walt. What's up on your side?
Oh, I've been experimenting like crazy. I've been you saw how much trouble we had setting up our platform today on the Zoom platform. I'm actually experimenting with a second platform that I'm hoping is going to be easier. So that's been a big thing. And plus we are starting to do pre-scheduled events in the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group on Facebook that we are also live streaming to as we record this. And we have our first event scheduled for Wednesday. It's a guided meditation led by life coach Cindy Chavez, and a yet to be announced event on Friday. So exciting things happening. In fact, you and I got to start figuring out some.
Right, that really sounds cool. I must join that.
Well, we got to come up with our own events to put up on Mondays too, right? So we can.
Absolutely, we can find something.
Yeah, we can do that. So yeah, good things happen. Yeah. So we're going to continue talking about healing. And Louis had some really great stories for us last week. I can hardly wait to find out what you're going to have for us this week. But I'm going to kind of turn this portion of the show over to you because you know where we're going and I'm waiting to find out.
Well, Walt, when you're talking about the law of attraction and healing, I really wanted to break it down. So in the past, we used to think, okay, I'm sick, I go to a doctor. Mm-hmm. Or I try and heal myself with maybe homeopathy, some alternative healing method. So you kind of think in that way. What would I do? You know, how do I move forward in getting better? Now, when you start bringing it down to the law of attraction, you now start looking at it from quite a different angle, in my point of view. I've started to realize, of course, that your thoughts create your reality. Yep. Which to me really excites me. So then I had to start looking at doctors. What do I believe? What do I think they're going to do for me? And then I started looking at tablets and what do I think they're going to do for me? And I started to see what was my belief around all the different modalities that I was using in my life to get better. And I had to really get a clear understanding of, you know, if I'm fighting against cancer, I'm only going to get more cancer. Mm-hmm. So what's the rocket of desire that comes out of fighting against cancer? And that is, you know, very simply, it's really, really interesting. You know, what comes out of that is a healthy, active lifestyle.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting when you turn the way you think and say it around, it comes out completely different, even though we think of it as an opposite.
You kind of think it's a bit shocking because you kind of think, no, I've got to get rid of this cold or I've got to get rid of this
Exactly.
Instead of thinking, you know, let me live a healthy, active lifestyle. So the whole thinking is turned on its head when you start understanding the law of attraction and you start working from a completely different angle when you look at it. So you start saying, okay, I've got a cold and I know that I've got a cold to help me in a certain way. And it's there because everything's always working out for me. That's what you learn with the law of attraction.
Right.
And you're sitting there and thinking, okay, this is working out for me. You know, you're really working out for me. And you're not so sure about the whole thing. So
you're trying to convince yourself of it anyway.
You know, it's a new way of thinking. So you're kind of thinking, okay, so I started looking at it closely because, you know, I've explained to you before that I actually enjoy getting sick.
Yes. Well, you're a strange person, Louis. That's all there is to it.
I don't get sick anymore really very often. There's one thing that still gets me, and because it's an active vibration, it's a thought, okay, and that is food poisoning. You know, when I get a gut problem that, you know, either bring up or comes out the other side, and
thank you for that visual. I really appreciate that. Our audience appreciates that.
Hey, it's the way it happens. I've got no problem with my bodily functions, but I know something. You know, as a little boy, I was going into the bushes and making poos and turning around and dissecting them and looking at them to try and understand. So when it comes to me studying the body, it's been from a young age, and it's been in many different ways. Okay?
We have definitely tread into the category of TMI. There is absolutely no doubt about it.
What that is. Sounds funny.
Too much information, TMI.
I've never heard that acronym for that before. But I appreciate what you're saying. So you've got this whole thing, all right. So I've got a cold, and because I don't have any fears or worries about that kind of things anymore, because I almost enjoy being sick, I started realizing something when I had a cold. You know, when I had aches and pains, so, you know, maybe your knee was a bit sore, your hip, or you had a little pain in your shoulder or something like that. When I got a really bad cold, I noticed something fascinating. I noticed that all those symptoms vanished and the cold was dominant. Okay. So I realized that my thinking had been distracted from the other one significantly enough that they vanished. Yeah. Now that's a really interesting understanding, because then you really understand it's your thoughts that have moved you into that place.
You're right. That's when you first observe that, when you first notice that, that is, it's hard to notice, first of all, because you're so consumed with being sick.
Exactly.
But when you realize that you are totally consumed with it, that you can't even mentally break out of it, and that this is something that you did, you put yourself in that mindset, that's a breakthrough. Yeah. That's a real breakthrough when you notice that.
It's fantastic when you get to that understanding, because what happened was my brother phoned me the other day and he said to me, I've got this unbelievable cold. I said, that's great. He's like,
my crazy brother again.
I said, bro, listen to me. I said, listen to me. Is there any ailments that you used to have that you sorry, I just want to ask my wife, darling, can you close the door, please? Thanks. So I asked him, is there any symptoms that you used to have, you know, that have been with you over a long period of time that have vanished suddenly? And he said, no. And he phones me back a day later. He says, you know, Louis, I've been thinking about what you said, and I've noticed this one's gone, this one's gone, this one's gone. And it's like, so you're becoming aware of it now as well. So it was really interesting, because when you get people to see how the mind can distract you,
yes,
and when you're distracted significantly enough, focusing on something else, even if it is something else negative, some other negative things can vanish, because your dominant focus, your dominant vibration has moved into another area. And I mean, he really sounded sick. Okay, it was when you really found, you know, you're feeling low, and you
we've
really,
all been there. Oh yeah.
So it was really interesting, because as you become more aware, you start noticing how your thoughts create the different ailments in your body and all the rest of it. So
that's when you start actually realizing that you want to get control of your mind, because you noticed just how good you are at it in the wrong direction.
Yeah. The other thing I realized about this little story that I've told you is that it's very interesting, because you feel a lot of relief and release from the long-term ailment. And it's really necessary. And you feel that there's a feeling of, oh, I can just relax now and just forget about all work and just let everything go. Okay, just let everything go. And that letting go allows you to get into a healing place for the long-term ones.
That letting go is not necessarily an easy process. Like, I mean, we just described how easily we get into this place, but letting go of that's not so easily done, is it?
Well, I will quote Richard Bach, illusions to you, argue for your limitations and they're yours.
I love it. No, it's true. It's true. It's true. No doubt about it. I was just thinking back to times when I have attempted to take control of my mind the first few times that I tried to do it. And it seemed impossible at first. But like you said, argue for your limitations and yours. So, yeah. All right, well then, by God, I'm going to find some way to focus on the thing that I want and not the thing that I don't want. And I don't care how many times my brain's going to pull me back to the thing I don't want. I am just going to win this battle. I'm going to focus on what right now I am right. No, I am right now going to, no, don't take me over there. I am right now focusing on what I want. That's often what it's like in the first few times, right? You're just trying to wrench it away. Like, no, I'm not going there.
And then you get to that easier place, because even that there's a little bit of pushing against, isn't it?
Oh, a little bit. There's a lot of pushing against going on there.
Pushing against. So you really want to soothe that statement out,
Right.
Nice if getting better was quicker and easier.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. That's a really good one.
Nice. And it's a very powerful phrase which I've used often now. Wouldn't it be nice? So, I really want to encourage people to get to a clear understanding about the beauty. One thing I've loved about the Abraham-Hicks teachings is they keep on taking people who have got mind hiccups and explaining to them how beautiful it is, and people who've got cancer and explaining how it's helping them so much, and taking all the negative things and seeing how it's benefiting people. And I've really, you really start grasping that along the way, how when you know what you don't want, it expands into what it does want. Okay.
It's a major growth point, actually, when we do that. And it's not one that we want to skip over, I think, because when you can make that change in your thought process and say, you know what, this thing that I find originally to be really terrible and I'm now finding a silver lining to, that's a big, big step to take. That's a good one. You got to pat yourself on the back when you do that one. It
is.
Yeah.
So I know that my friend has just arrived, so
okay.
We'll be moving on there in a little while. So she had a really, really amazing experience. She was going on. She went to. I don't want to give too much away because she's going to tell the story now. But she went on an energy course, and she wants to come in. She went on an energy course, and she had some incredible experiences. There was healing there involved as well. So, I just wanted to bring that in on this conversation, but it's really quite an interesting story. So I'm quite excited to bring her in and let her have a chat about that aspect. So
sounds great.
So when you go for healing, when I'm looking at getting better now, there's a couple of basic things that I started looking at. First of all, I use water endlessly for my healing to get relief and release. I will do a bath, and in my bath I'll put salt, and in the salt I'll put some aromatherapy oils, and I'll just soak. And even while I'm in there, I'll tend to find that I'll get a lot of relief and release out of that all by itself. So the cold will go, I'll clear up. And if I get out, it may come back not so long after that, but at least during that period, I've had relief and release from it. If it's a stomach ache or a headache or anything, I'll find that water is, with a few little extras, can really be of immense benefit to get that kind of relief and release. So I'm looking, I wanted to go through more along the way, talking about different methods, and that's why I'm excited about next week, because we're going to have Astrid on, and she's does Jinshin Jitsu as a practitioner.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to listen to her, because she's had some amazing experiences, some incredible clients, and all the rest of it. And Jinshin Jitsu is the simplest way that I've found over looking at all the different healing arts that for me, and I'm not saying that any of the others are wrong for anybody else. Everybody finds their own one.
Yeah.
That is the quickest and easiest one for me, just to get relief and release. So I'm excited to talk about that next week as well. So
that sounds good.
That one will be really, really good. So Lizzie's here, so just give me a few seconds.
All right. And while you're getting Lizzie in there, I'll just give a couple announcements to remind people.
Sure. Let's get those down.
Reminding people that if you're not yet a subscriber to the podcast, please do consider becoming a subscriber so that you can get access to all of the episodes. after they're created, coming streaming right to your smartphone. Easy to do. If you aren't sure how to subscribe, just go to the homepage of our website at loatoday.net, and you will find instructions on how to do it listed there. There are icons for Android phones, icons for iPhones, and you can just basically click your way through it, and all of a sudden you're subscribed. It's just that simple. And once you're a subscriber, and for our existing subscribers, please continue to post on your favorite social media channels that you are subscribing and listening to. Listen every time that you listen, tweet something or post something on Facebook. Hey, I'm listening to loatoday.net, because that repetition, putting the message out there that our listeners are listening, and they're saying that they're listening, is making a difference in terms of more and more people getting their daily dose of happy. And we really appreciate it when you help get the word out, because we want to get we have so much information to get out there, and we want to get it out there to the millions. And law of attraction, that's one of the ways to do it, right? That's probably the best way to do it, by simply putting out what it is that you want and staying off what you don't want, and all of a sudden people find you. So thank you for becoming a subscriber. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for listening. We appreciate you both listening here on the podcast, and if you're listening by the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group on Facebook, we love having you too. So, you want to do the introductions, or are you ready yet? I'm not sure if I'm rushing you yet, but I just got my promos done.
No, I've just put you on mute so I can have a quick chat, and we're ready to go. I just wanted to give you a quick introduction. Liz is one of the mothers. So my daughter and her daughter go to the same school in the same class. Ah. And we met many years ago when I was carrying my daughter on my chest, going to a kindergarten type class, and Liz saw me on the road. She bumped into me, started chatting, and since then we've been friends. And it's been how many years now? Over 10 years. Yeah. So just gonna pass you over to Liz, and when she's finished, I will just continue, and then we'll wrap up. I think that'll probably be the end of the session.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm gonna hand you over now.
Oh, here comes Liz. Hi there, Liz.
Hello there.
How are you?
Okay, very well. Am I supposed to? I'm not very technological.
It's quite sensitive.
So I hopefully, can you hear me?
Oh, you're just fine. Your volume is great.
Am I sitting in the right place? So Louis said he'd been speaking on his podcasts about health, and wondered if I'd like to come and share an experience that I had last year. Mm-hmm. And basically, I had my first experience of mental health problem, and I thought I'd come and share what I learned from it, and hopefully it might be of benefit for someone else.
Yeah.
So basically, in January last year, I went on a weekend conference, a personal development conference, which was amazing. It was brilliant training. It gave you lots of tools to help you design and create the kind of life you might really love living. But it was in LA. They had very, very high energy.
I imagine.
And it was extremely intense, from 9 in the morning to 9 at night. And on the plane on the way over, I didn't sleep. And I didn't sleep much at the conference, and didn't on the way back. So basically, I got massive sleep deprivation with the jet lag, and I had a manic episode, which I'd never had before. And I did it properly, and I had 3 nights in a real high security mental institute, which was extremely scary, but amazing experience. Even journalists wouldn't be able to pay to have that.
Okay.
But luckily, in the experience, I had all these stories and ideas that were coming to me, and nothing ever came to a conclusion. But I was, they were all pointing to the disconnection that I was seeing in the world, particularly technological. Everyone on their phones disconnected with each other, particularly disconnected with the earth. I'm quite an environmentalist as well. I could see that it was making everyone sick. So when I was particularly concerned about sort of the lack of connection with the earth. So afterwards, luckily, I recovered very quickly. I've got wonderful friends and family that sort of supported me, and once I'd got enough sleep, I was much better.
That does help too.
It does. But I did a lot of reading and learned a lot about psychology, and I began to realize that whatever you see out there is actually what you have inside you. So I realized that if I was seeing a lot of disconnection out there, that's what I had inside me. And I'm lucky that I'm a pretty happy person. And I've learned lots of sort of, I suppose, along the lines of law of attraction things, focusing on what you want, focusing on gratitude. I've kept a gratitude diary for sort of, quite a few years, possibly about 7 years now.
Wow.
But somehow I think I've possibly been avoiding my own negative emotion without really even knowing it. And
Well, I think that's we all do that. I mean, is there anybody who doesn't do that? We don't want the negative emotions. Of course we avoid them. Why would we do that?
But Louis says quite frequently, in relation to the law of attraction, that your emotions are your guidance system. And I know I'm English, and we English are particularly known for being stiff upper lip and not actually being very in contact with your emotions. But I've had an excellent, very expensive education. I speak lots of languages, and I was shocked at how little I knew about emotions, and how I don't think many of us had much training in recognizing and identifying and knowing what to do with. And as I came in, Louis was talking about releasing your emotions. So I've been learning a lot, and there's a few messages have come to me from different quarters. People have said, oh, maybe you've got sort of hidden anger. And I feel like a very happy person. I don't feel particularly angry, but I thought I would try and write an anger diary. So I've been keeping a diary, particularly if you have children, I think, and dare I say a husband, you sometimes you get
well,
very...
I won't tell, but unfortunately you've just told the world, so I can't do much about that.
You find that things, particularly with your children, you are irritated by, but you can't really sort of scream and shout very, when they're small. So you kind of probably swallow it and keep it in. So I've been going to my diary and writing down sort of, lots of F words. I don't, as I say, I don't feel particularly angry, but as you start writing, you can sort of get in touch with it and feel it. And the funny thing is, I'm going to show you the finger now.
This is a first, not LOA today.
This is there is a very reason. I told my daughter this morning. She said, maybe you can hold your fingers like that, Mummy. And I'm showing you because you probably can't see, but I did for about 7 years. I had a sort of a slight deformity here on this finger. It was I kept on picking at it, and the skin just wasn't right. It was the other side was smooth, but that side was, there was something wrong with it. And when I started writing this anger diary, it's completely healed and it's completely smooth. And, and I'm aware, Louis was saying as well, Jinshin Jitsu, the lady next week's going to talk about, I was aware that your fingers have different emotions attached to them, and the middle one is anger. It's also sex as well, I think.
Well, I won't even try to comment on that one.
Well, we won't go there. But so basically, I realized that, getting in touch with and actually really experiencing your emotions and being able to know what to do to release them is really massively important, particularly, if you're using the law of attraction to heal a health issue. If you're not paying attention to your emotions and allowing yourself to experience them and release them, then it's much less likely to function for you, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah. So basically, that's pretty much it. To sum up what I've learned on my journey so far is make sure you get enough sleep.
That does help, yes.
and learn what you can about your own emotions and what they're telling you. Yeah.
By the way, I don't think that the stiff upper lip is limited to the British,
No.
Because I can't speak for all Americans or even all males around the world, but I learned very early on in life to keep I didn't call it a stiff upper lip. I just call it shoving the emotions down, but it basically amounted to the same thing.
Yes.
So it's not just you guys. I just want
to. We are particularly good at it.
Well, you're the leaders of it. That's what it is. But that's great. What you did exactly what Louis was just talking about, because before you came on, he talked about how the best thing that can happen is if you get really sick, because then you're in a position where you totally get how well you're focusing on being sick and showing yourself just how strong you are mentally to be able to do that.
Yes.
And you found that place and you were able to turn around and go in the direction you wanted to go in, which is fabulous.
Yes, and managed not to take drugs, because that's the thing that the Western system tends to try and force.
Oh,
When
yes.
I was in the institute, I did feel a bit ridiculous because there were these people going up to what I call the sweetie counter with little cup, and their cup was overflowing with sweeties, and I was arguing vehemently against my tiny one little tablet.
Good for you, though. Good for you.
There's a great film I might just mention that I've just seen called E-Motion, E with a hyphen and then motion, which basically explains that sort of all ailments, everything in the body, is caused by trapped emotions, and it gives you some sort of ideas about how to, release them. I think you can get it in the UK on Amazon Prime, but it's a great film, and that's starting to, I think, move the shift in Western medicine anyway against medicating, sort of cutting things out, surgery, and actually looking for the real cause of issues rather than just dealing with the symptoms.
Right. Yeah, and I'll have to check out that one. I think I was peripherally aware of that movie, but it hadn't really entered the conscious mind yet.
So it's a good one to watch.
Right. So I'll take a look for that one. Emotions. That's good. So thank you, Liz. I mean, what a great story. Thank you for going over to Louie's house to take
you're very welcome.
to tell us all of this.
5 minutes away, so it wasn't too much.
Well, I'm glad we didn't put you too far out, but we do appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I shall pass you back to Louie.
All right. Very good. Good story.
Yeah, it's great, and I really feel Liz downplayed it. When Liz called me after her trip back from America, I could feel a tremendous energy and power coming out of her voice when she was speaking to me. She was really different place. The family's mother and wife who left was not the mother and wife who came back. And it was an incredible transformation for her. And I said to Liz once, I said, Liz, I'm actually quite envious of this experience, because to me it was a full-blown Kundalini from base chakra to the crown chakra, opening. And it was an amazing experience. So I was saying to her, I wish I'd had something like that. Not what most people would say, no.
Well, we already know you're a little strange, but that's okay. We kind of write that one off because you have good reason to be strange, so it's okay.
I have the T-shirt.
You have the T-shirt, right? Yeah. At the very least, you do. No doubt about that. It's fascinating. The story she tells certainly mirrored what we talked about before she came on the show about how you get to that really bad place. Like if you're dealing with an illness and you're just so sick, and that's actually the best place to be in, because you understand and realize how powerful your focus is to be in that place in the first place, because you can't see anything else. Everything else, once you notice it, everything else is gone, and all you can feel is the sickness. That's a pretty strong thing to notice, that, oh my God, I actually eliminated everything else except being sick. I mean, in her case, it was eliminating everything else except having sleep, but also eliminating everything else. But I don't even, how would you characterize what she went through? I mean, she was able to give us some description, but I don't even know how I would describe it.
Do you remember those 5 days I was talking about in the last experience, that incredible hernia operation experience of mine?
Right.
I was saying I spent 5 days in the vortex. Now, she, from my point of view, was sitting in the vortex getting all this information pouring into her, but didn't really know what was happening or how to use it practically. And even I was not clear at the time, and I don't think I've really spoken to Liz about the clarity that I'm now getting about it, is that writing those down, so the vortex will only give you what it feels is actionable now at that moment in time. We'll
Even if it's an overload.
Pieces of the grid of what you need to do then and there. When you're not quite integrated in the physical, it's very difficult to practically apply them. And I think big experiences like that do have that challenge where you get a lot of information, but you're not quite sure how to apply any of it.
Well, it's an overload. That's the word that seems to make the most sense to me, because if it's coming in so fast that you can't even handle it. I mean, she knocked her into an institute. I mean, she almost lost control of herself in a sense, in the sense that we normally think about it, but in terms of the fact that if you're right, and I think you're probably right, that she was really almost slammed into the vortex and was getting this information so fast that she couldn't handle it. But eventually she got to the point where she could write it, she could express it, she could get it out. And in that way she could handle it. It was just like, it was like being a computer that just got a massive data surge that exceeded the database capacity. And now the computer's trying to handle that surge.
Can't handle it.
Right.
So what Abram would say that is a quantum leap. And they don't specifically recommend quantum leaps. And I asked Liz, do you recommend quantum leaps? And the answer is?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Understandably. Yeah.
Down quite hard.
If you want to come back down quite hard, she says.
Yes, right. Yes.
So, when you become more experienced with that part of you, you tend to be able to have greater periods of time when you can experience it, and you can tend to choose how you want to experience it after a while. You want to blocks more concentrated or less concentrated. So it's something you can choose to a greater degree when you get more control, and you get more control by being clear about focusing more on what you want, less on what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do we have left there, Walt?
A little under half an hour, so we got plenty of time. Yep.
Okay, great. So, do you have any questions to me about health, nutrition, kind of problems that you would have normally that you would maybe want to change or speed up? Or
interesting, because I've had plenty of things to work on. Health is not one of my things lately that I needed to work on, although I need to just start making some more time to get out and exercise my body and so forth. But in terms of major illnesses, I mean, I had something this past spring that I went through that I was mindful of while you were explaining what you went through.
Right.
It was not nearly as a knock on your back kind of thing, but it was painful enough. I was dealing with a ligament injury in my knee, actually in both knees. And at one point it got so severe that I had to just lie down. I couldn't do anything else and apply a lot of ice and so forth. But in the midst of doing that, I decided, okay, well, this is a good time to start practicing what I've been learning and what I've been talking about on the show and what my co-hosts have been telling me about, and see if I can direct my attention to what I want and take it off what I don't want. And it was that's where I was coming from when I was talking about how it can be that struggle when you're first playing with it.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, my knee was screaming at me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a continuous scream. It was a chronic continuous scream. And here I am I was trying to use a technique that I had previously used, which is if it's two limbs, and of course limbs were bisymmetrical. So if one limb is good and the other limb is not good, I try to pretend that the not good limb is like the good limb. Mm-hmm. And so I'll focus on the good limb and say,
that's
okay,
a great way of doing it. I love the concept. Yeah,
it does work. Well, in some cases, it's the only way I've been able to take my mind off it. And this is one of those cases. But literally, in this case, it was my left knee that was swollen beyond recognition, and my right knee was in actually pretty good shape. So I was just focusing on my right knee and saying, okay, my right knee is exactly the way my left knee is. No, turn it around. My left knee is the way my right knee is. And all this time, the pain is pulling me back to the left knee. And I'm saying, no, I'm not going to go there. And then all of a sudden, I reached about, I would say, a half a second of clarity. And in that half second of clarity, the left knee's pain disappeared.
Wow.
And then the half second later, it came back. I said,
do you know what's fascinating about that, Walt? And when Abram says, when you go into meditation and you stop thought and you get into that vortex place,
mm-hmm.
just a little bit of time there is worth a lot.
Oh yeah, it was a breakthrough. I had never done that before.
A huge amount. Okay.
All of a sudden, I had done something I had never done before. That I had actually removed the pain. To heck with the fact it was only a half a second. I did it at all. That was great. That was amazing. Exactly. And I was instantly motivated to see if I could do it again. And so I kept working on it again. And this time I think I got it for like 3 seconds. I was like, oh my God, I'm making progress here. This is fabulous. And after doing it for a while, I actually got to the point, I don't think I ever got it more than like a half minute to a minute. But by that point I was pretty wiped out. I'd been trying and struggling so hard on it. So I just kind of, the pain had subsided a bit, putting the ice on had helped bring the swelling down a bit. And so I just kind of fell asleep. And then after I woke up and started moving around and so forth, I found the pain had been greatly reduced. And after doing some more imagining of what it would be like to have the left knee feeling like the right knee, I think it was within about a week, the pain had reduced by about 95%. It was a huge reduction.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember, I think you remember you saying something, you don't like painkillers or tablets or.
I try to avoid them. I had actually taken one in this case because it was just so painful, and it did nothing. Did absolutely nothing.
It did nothing. Okay.
Did nothing. It was I believe it was an ibuprofen because I had supposedly, the reduction of swelling thing. Didn't do a thing. Not one thing. Nope.
So when I would have something like that, the first thing I learned about swelling is that you must put cold on it. Okay, because when you've got cold on a swelling, what happens is you don't swell. Every time you swell, you tear your body. There's another more accurate word. The cells of your body. So you actually tear them. So because I was swimming in the pool and I pulled my calf muscle. So I tore my calf muscle, and I thought, it was a long time ago, and I thought, oh, let me go into the sauna, keep it nice and warm.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing you can do. And really, really quickly too.
And you know how long it took me to heal that? It was unbelievable. It was a great learning curve for me, as I get the cold on it. So the other thing I would use for it after, the swelling's not going up anymore was water again. And the other thing I would use is Jinshin Jitsu, because there's a flow, it's the large intestine flow, which is said to reduce the healing time by at least a quarter, half to a quarter. And I found that to be tremendously useful for me again and again whenever I get that flow.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about that whole practice, because I suspect there's that can kind of like add to my toolbox, so to speak.
Absolutely. There's some really simple stuff. And the great thing about Jinshin Jitsu is you can get really complicated if that's where your mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just stay really simple if that's what appeals.
That's
to
good.
You. And allows there's a scope for everybody to go as far or as close as they want to play with it, which I love about that kind of thing.
And I totally get what you mean about cold, because I tried the exact same thing. I didn't do it with getting in the shower, but I tried applying heat, and the heat is what put me on my back. That's why I couldn't move anymore. And so we said, okay, well, my wife's trying to help me out, so let's try ice instead. And we actually didn't even have an ice bag. We just got a towel and wrapped it in ice.
Put it on around. Yeah. I do that as well.
And try to put some padding in there so that it doesn't absolutely give you ice burn or something like that. But it was painful, but it was worth it, because it did bring the swelling down considerably. I mean, it didn't eliminate the problem, but it really helped a lot.
Mm. So I've really been looking at the idea now. When I look at a tablet, what is my belief in it? When I'm looking at Jinshin Jitsu, what is my belief in it? When I'm looking at Arnica cream, what is my belief in it? When I'm looking
what cream is that?
Arnica. So that's very good for swelling.
Oh, okay. I don't know about it.
You don't know Arnica? Wow. It's very, very well known and popular. So it's something you can get over the counter.
Well, it just shows how limited my experience is. So
not necessarily in different areas. We're all good. So it really was interesting, because I started to see how much time had I thought that this is actually good for me. How much time, I don't have a huge amount of respect for the medical doctor. When I look at the medical doctor now, they're good at making diagnosis. They're good at maybe patching you up with a needle and thread, or opening you up and taking something out if necessary. But when it comes to a lot of their suggestions of how to treat things, because of my confidence and my understanding of my own body, is not something I'll go down many routes that they necessarily suggest. And every time I have gone down a route that they've suggested that kind of didn't feel 100% okay with me, it never worked. It doesn't never worked. So I've had to be really, really careful about my thought processes and what I believe and what's going to work for me and what's not going to work for me. And I've taken almost complete responsibility for my own health, my own body. So, I run exercise classes. I take very good nutrition in my body. And I do Jinshin Jitsu very often, and I do little things, and I don't want it to overcrowd anything. So I've made sure that I just do the minimum. and then I focus on what I want, and I'm going out there, my body's okay, my mind's okay, everything's okay. So I'm just spending that energy and that time, not worrying about my health anymore, because that's kind of the basis set, and I've got all the basic blocks in place.
And I think you've also done something really important. You have set yourself a habitual pattern. That habitual pattern makes a huge difference. I think one of the reasons we tend to get less than desirable results from alternative modalities is we try them once or we try them twice. We don't turn it into a habit. So even though it was a minimal amount that you were putting in, it was a habitually minimal amount. And that habit, because you're doing it every single day, I think that's what makes the whole difference.
They call it compound interest in the money world, don't they?
They do indeed, yes.
Doing a little bit often and then building up, good habits. So good habits are what? They're nothing more than good thoughts.
That's true, yeah.
So when people talk about attitude's just good or bad thoughts. You have good or bad attitudes, but it's just good thoughts. So it goes back to the initial concept that thoughts create your reality. And it's really important for people to grasp that when they want to learn to heal, is that their thoughts are primary in the healing process. So if you are not particularly confident about your healing or your healing process, then in a way, it's what Abraham was saying is you're committing suicide.
Or in the long term.
You're committing in long term, or whatever term. You're harming the body with your belief structure. So it's really
that's another breakthrough right there, is recognizing just how habitual the negative thought patterns have been, the thought patterns that we don't want, that we keep focusing on anyway. And even when you notice it, even if you find that you're having trouble switching it around and focusing on what you want, just the recognition of it is big, because a lot of people don't recognize it. A lot of people aren't even aware that it's an issue.
No. And it literally changes your life when you start getting it, because you start being clearer about what you want and spending more time focusing on it.
That's right.
And it sounds very simple.
Doesn't it?
Very simple. But, it's a process where, you don't go from here to here in a second. There's a gradual curve to it. And it takes time for you to get to that place where you're really confident about your health and your body, and you actually become confident about death.
Yeah.
You realize that it is an ultimate thing that's going to happen to everybody. And it's not such a big issue anymore. When somebody dies, or even if they commit suicide in the normal sense.
The normal sense. That's an interesting
once you
phrase.
start to understand Abraham-Hicks, you understand everybody commits suicide. But when you're talking about society and the way they look at suicide, you understand that they think that somebody who actually goes out there and hangs themselves or jumps off a bridge or something.
Right.
So when I say in the normal sense, even when they do that, you don't feel bad about it anymore. You don't feel any of the negativity. They've re-emerged into non-physical, and everything's always working out for you, which is a really difficult concept for a lot of people to really get behind when they haven't had the exposure to kind of the understandings that Abraham has brought in there.
I know also that what made a difference for me was when my father died. When my father died, my sister, I told you the story, I think, had a message from him a few days later. And the rest of us in the family were so convinced of the veracity of that message that it really was a message from him. For me, I think I'd always had some sense of what the non-physical world is, in the sense of the way Abraham presents it, because when I first heard Abraham's presentation of what it's like, it resonated so clearly with me. I said, yes, this is the first time I've heard an explanation of the non-physical that actually makes sense to me. But more than that, when my dad died and we got the messaging and so forth, for the first time in my life that I can remember, I actually felt confident and calm about death. Because now I had what seemed to me anyway to be confirmation that he's fine. He's perfectly fine. He may not be in the physical world anymore, but he's fine. And do I miss him at times? Yeah, I do. I miss him in the physical world, but nevertheless, he's fine. And that's the key takeaway. Once you know that you're fine when you get into the non-physical world, no longer part of the leading edge or the bleeding edge, as we call it, of the physical world, that you're fine. There's nothing serious going on here. There's no terrible consequence going on here. You're just fine. Once you reach that point, then, well, I really want to live a long life, but I'm not terrified of it anymore. I'm not terrified of the death.
The one aspect about loss, I've lost my mother, like you've lost your dad, is that loss. There is that strong feeling of loss for a while. I must say, I don't feel it anymore at all. But, and that is probably what I would call the grieving period. But there's no worry that she's gone to a place that is not great, or I have to pray for her to go from purgatory to heaven. And
yeah, right. Thank goodness we don't have to do all that.
So there's none of that guilt aspect, which the way I look at it, that I have to work at. So it was really, there was a loss. I mean, I remember when my sister was telling me that my mom's heart was beating erratically, and they got a helicopter to fly in, and they shocked her about 11 times or something. And as she was going up in the helicopter, my sister said she was just saying, "Goodbye, Mom. Just go up, just continue going up to heaven, just go." And it really affected me. It was like quite a, and she was in a coma and died a few days later. But, there is a great feeling of loss at the time, and, the grieving period, I believe, is very, very important. But
I agree.
Afterwards, like you can have messages, and when you're in a happy place, you can have connection with them. The reason I believe I haven't had much connection with my mother is I was never strongly connected to her at any stage. I mean, I know she was my mom, but I never felt strongly bonded to her. So it wasn't a connection which I felt very important to have, like you, an experience afterwards.
Well, I also had the advantage/disadvantage. My dad died from symptoms related to Parkinson's disease, and without getting graphic about it, the end can be really, really awful in some ways. And so but it's
really a relief for everybody.
It's a relief. It's exactly what it is. So I actually, somewhat to my surprise, did all my grieving before he died.
Yeah.
When he died, the grieving was done. And I was expecting more grieving to come, and it didn't happen. And that's when I realized, I guess I just did it all. It's already been done. So I don't have to deal with that anymore, which was, that was kind of it was a breakthrough, and it was kind of a surprise at the same time.
My wife, because she works in palliative care where people go to die in the nursing home there, you kind of understand that process. You kind of see that happening quite often with a lot of the sons and daughters and family of the people that are in the homes who often have Parkinson's and dementia and things like that. And it was interesting what Abraham says about Parkinson's and dementia. My wife was telling me that often when they've got these memory losses, while they're going through the process, while they're realizing they're losing their marbles, it's quite traumatic for them. And she says, but once they've lost them, then they're the happiest people day in and day out from morning to night. They just got this big grin on their face. Everything's beautiful. Everything's happy. And then you start realizing that it was just the thought processes that they were thinking that was holding them in that negative or that place that was unhappy. Something had happened in the past that they didn't like, that they were regurgitating in their mind mostly, which is really, really interesting when you start seeing that dynamic happen.
Well, it's also interesting when you understand it that way, because I think most people who experience a parent or a family member going into that pattern, all of a sudden they seem to have lost connection, so to speak. That seems like a sad place, but you just showed how it's actually a happy place.
Absolutely.
Because now all of a sudden they've managed, perhaps in a way that we would prefer not them to do, but they have managed to separate themselves from all that angst that they've been carrying all that time.
And it's interesting because they created their reality, so they created this for themselves. And they're doing it for themselves to get relief and release.
Right.
Yeah. And when you start looking at it like that, it can really help some people. Some people may not like what I'm saying at all, but yeah, it's
well, it's understandable too, because now they can no longer communicate
the way they used to. Absolutely. And when you're looking at the ultimate goal of life being a happier person and a happier life, then you're looking at it from the point of view that, they're now in a happy place. Isn't that great? They've achieved what is one of the ultimate goals for a lot of humans is just to be happy.
This is true. This is true.
And
it's also a reminder too, when we move from the physical to the non-physical, that's kind of like a way of getting a quick preview of what it's like, because every report that I've ever heard is that once you've moved into the non-physical, it's an extremely happy place, including my dad. I told you we had the message from my dad.
Yeah.
What happened is, I think it was 4 or 5 days after he died, my mother and my sister went to church together, to my mom's church. And my sister's sitting there and all of a sudden starts getting a massive headache.
Yeah.
Taken enough psychic classes to be taught that a massive headache can mean that you're being contacted by somebody from the non-physical who's having trouble getting, the pain receptor straight and not pushing too hard and so forth. So she thought immediately of my dad and said, "Dad, is that you?" And got instantly back a yes. Mm-hmm. And my sister, being my sister, the first thing she thought of was, "What's it like on the other side?" And the answer, that's right, on the far side. That's right. And the answer came back, festive.
Festive, yeah.
Festive. Yeah. And that, by the way, that was the proof for me that my sister had not made this up. Because if my sister had come up with a word to describe it, she would have said amazing, fantastic, incredible. Mm-hmm. Festive was not in her vocabulary. That was not a word. That's a dad word. That's what I call a dad word. And that's how I knew it was my dad.
Interesting thing, recently Abraham brought out one of the newer recordings was Esther's good friend was translating, and Esther felt it, and Esther said to Abraham, "Is so-and-so translating?" And Abraham said, "Yes." He said, "Do you want to experience it as well?" And Esther said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And Esther was explaining that this was the most amazing relief and release and freedom and empowerment and positive experience that she'd ever had. And it was just mind-blowing, the transition between in the physical, where you have what you don't want and what you want all around you, to have what you don't want all vanished and just left with what you do want. Ending up in the vortex and the kind of experience of having all that released completely, which is how they kind of described what was happening at the death stage.
Wow.
Which I thought was a really great way of explaining. It's, putting or asking Esther if she wanted to go through that experience with the individual, the friend.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's so far out of our physical experience that it's almost mind-boggling to imagine, but it certainly is full of, wow, that sounds so cool, that kind of feeling.
It does. Yeah. Gives you another perspective to chew on, even if you don't fully agree with it or believe it. What else can we talk about with health and healing? There's so much.
Well, I think we should return to the basic concept, which is that healing starts in the mind. And so perhaps maybe the best thing to talk about in the next, we got 7 minutes left or so, maybe talk about what steps do you take? You're now more of an advanced practitioner because you've learned so much about this stuff with your wonderful position of being in colds and illnesses and so forth, as you describe it. But you've learned a bunch of stuff. So what's your favorite ways? I mean, you kind of outlined them briefly, the jujitsu, what's the pronunciation of that? I got it wrong.
Just think of jin like you're drinking.
Jin.
But it's spelled with a J. And shin like the shin of your leg.
Jinshin.
Yeah, Jinshin Jitsu.
Jinshin Jitsu. Okay.
So if you just type Jinshin in the website, you'll find it easily enough.
But that's one of your modalities. But what's your favorite? How do you tend to, if you find yourself slipping, which doesn't sound like it happens very much anymore, but if you do find yourself slipping, what's your best way to turn it around?
So I've found that different modalities work better in different circumstances. Okay, so if I've bumped my toe, I will obviously treat it quite differently to a stomach bug, or if I've got a cold, I'll treat it quite differently to a headache. So I kind of go to different modalities, and it might be interesting for me to actually formulate clarity about which problem I have and which solutions I tend to gravitate to. And maybe I can think about bringing that in next time, because there is quite a difference between all of them. What I would do,
I'd say it's worthwhile.
When I've got a headache, I literally go into a child pose, the yoga child pose. So you literally in a child position, but the head is on my bed. And I find that brings a huge, it can almost completely give me completely instant relief from headaches. So
When you say child position, you mean like fetal position?
a fetal position, so put your knees on a bed, go into kind of a fetal position, put your head onto the bed or onto a yoga mat, and then put a little bit of pressure so that you're straightening the neck. Okay. So you're letting the neck become a bit longer. That's what I do for a headache, which would be completely different. Now, headaches, I tend to now and again, although I haven't done it for quite a while, I tend to take a tablet. I take a quarter tablet painkiller just to get that initial relief and release while I'm working with all the other things that I'm doing. So I'm happy to use medication now and again, very in small quantities, to be able to just shift me in a little bit more in that direction, which is quite fun. Colds, I would do a bath with a bit of salt and aromatherapy oil, mostly lavender. I find it very, very effective. And literally, I say within say 10 minutes to half an hour, and I put my head completely in the water, I completely submerge it, so that I'm actually, my ears in the water as well. And I find it can get rid of a cold almost completely. But as I say, as I get out, the cold will tend to come back. Okay, when I'm not in that place of releasing it. But it's given me that space, like the headache tablet gave me the space. So I'm always looking for gaps. If it's chronic enough, if it's mild, don't bother with any of that. You can deal with it in other ways.
Such as
now
when you say other ways, what are the other ways? Let's touch on that.
Let's dig into them all. So I would use homeopathy.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of tissue salts, which you may or may not have heard of.
Have not.
Okay. You can get them over the counter. There's 12 tissue salts, and you get the ones for cold. The most amazing ones is for teething for kids.
Really?
We've used them for both our children, and you just give them one, and that red face within 10 minutes to half an hour, gone completely, no pain, no worries, nothing else, and it's completely harmless. It's like a homeopathy tablet, but they've mixed certain ones of the 12, and they put it in a specific one for teething. So you need kind of know which ones to mix. There's a little booklet you can get, and there's a lot of information. Tissue salts are amazing. They're absolutely incredible. I use the Bach remedies if I ever get a bit stressed. Very rare, but I love the what do they call that Bach remedy? Rescue remedy. The Bach rescue remedy is really incredible. And I know that this is a European thing, and I know that Australians have created their remedies, and I'm not sure if America's also got theirs, but I wouldn't be surprised. So because you get different flowers in America, different flowers in Europe, and different flowers in Australia, or plants, you would use different remedies for your locale. So as I say, I'm aware that Australia's got theirs. I know Bach remedies are the ones that they use here, which is imagine is a German guy with that name. So tissue salts are really incredible. You know, if you've got muscle spasms, very, very, very good. So what else would I do? Just trying to think. I don't get too many ailments anymore.
Say about the bruises with the right hand and left hand bruises.
Oh, so in Jinshin Jitsu as well, if you ever get a cut, all right, so you got a small cut or a big cut, doesn't matter what size it is. If you want to help somebody, you take your right hand and you put it on red, and you take your left hand and you put it over on top. Okay.
Red meaning any red object?
I'm talking about a cut. So you've got a wound where you've been cut, and you take your right hand, put it on top of it, take the left hand.
On top of the wound. Oh, okay.
On top of the wound, yeah. So you might want to put a gauze or something on top of it, so you're not directly on top of the wound.
Right.
Or you don't even have to touch the wound if it's too big. And literally, I've literally seen the wound close up. Okay, and if you can stack up 3 or 4 different hands there, it's more powerful. But what this does is it closes up the wound. Right.
Wow.
Just remember, right on red, right hand. So if you've seen somebody in the street and all the rest of it, and before the medics have come and all the rest of it, you just go put your hands there gently, and it'll close up the wound. Now the opposite has happened as well. I've got I had a thorn in my foot. Okay, so I couldn't get it out. I tried with a needle and all the rest of it, just wouldn't come out. It was really annoying me. So I took the left hand and then the right hand on top of it. Not right on red now. It's now the opposite because you want to draw it out. Okay, so you swap the hands over. So right on red closes and brings it down. The other way around will open out. So I did it like that for about 10 minutes. My wife doubled up for me at that time because she was a nurse and trying to help me get this thing out as well, and we couldn't. And then I just fell asleep, woke up the next morning, and it literally had come out of the skin and was sitting right on top. Just take the tweezers and pull it out. Okay, so it had drawn it out.
Wow.
Which was, to me, amazing. It was just quite incredible. But I think we might have come to the end today.
Yeah, we're actually a little bit over time, but that's all right. It just leaves me a little editing to do. That's no big deal. But this has been great, and I look forward to hearing your Jinshin Jitsu. Did I say it right? Your
Perfect. Well done.
Expert next week. Yeah, that's going to be fun. So yeah, please, everybody, tune in next time.
I'm looking forward to bringing my sister-in-law Astrid on board.
There we go. And we hope that you'll join us as well next time you're on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care, everybody.